huge excitement for the Katie Taylor fight. And, you know, there was a little bit of kind of confusion. Was it going to happen or was it not? I thought there was a problem with security, and then Conor McGregor was going to step in and pay the bill. And anyway, it's on in the 3 Arena.
It is, and it seems to be par for the course with these big boxing events, that they don't ever seem to go particularly smoothly.
No, boxing is peculiar because, like, they'll announce that something's on and then it's not on, and then people are calling one another out. Now, it doesn't seem to be the same in the women's.
No.
The women aren't as sort of...
no, but there's always a big drama surrounding it, all right, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, so it looked like it wasn't going to happen, and now it is. It's happening in May. And, you know, with that all kind of going on in the background, you know, and obviously the huge homecoming that it is, because Katie Taylor is absolutely loved and adored across Ireland. She's a huge national hero. But in the background, unfortunately, are still links back to Daniel Kinahan and to, I suppose, the poison he spread on the boxing world for so long. You know, for years and years and years, we in particular were writing all about his links to boxing. I think back in 2012, we were the first people to reveal that he'd opened a boxing club in Marbella when myself and McCaffrey were out, and we found it and discovered them going in and out of it. We followed it all the way as it grew bigger. You know, as MGM was sold, we were told, and became MTK, and as Daniel Kinahan claimed, he had nothing to do with it, and then as it emerged that he certainly did have something to do with it, and that he then spoke himself about his links to Tyson Fury and the fact that he had been working as a fixer in the background. Yeah,
I mean, the first thing you'd have to say is Katie Taylor absolutely had no links, and in quite an admirable way.
And kept well away from all of that.
Well away from them, when one can only presume that there were so much money swirling around MTK that she would have been a big prize for them. And she kept absolutely clear of them. When they were signing up every Irish boxer who ever stepped in a ring, it seemed at times, she kept totally away from them. However, this is the first big event really since the Regency to be held in Ireland, a boxing event to be held in Ireland. And while she's on the card and she's the star and that's what people are going to see, she obviously has to fight somebody, and then there's an undercard. And it's between those two things that we see the Kinahan name pop up again.
Significant links, really. I mean, it's not subtle.
No.
Like, you know, let's be honest about it. And sorry, I wanted to say to you, by the way, Katie Taylor was one of the people brought out to MGM in Marbella by her father, Pete Taylor, when he was still training her. But it was at some point she was brought out there, because I remember they posted photographs on their Facebook site at the time welcoming Katie and her father out. She trained, you know. They were courting celebrity all the time out in Spain in that gym. And loads of people, loads of sports stars went without having a clue.
Yeah, of course, it wasn't
what the
known.
links were.
Yeah, it
because
wasn't
Matthew Macklin was the front man, you know what I mean? So she did. And her father would go on to train MTK boxers, and MTK obviously was the company founded by Daniel Kinahan, became a big global phenomenon and shut down or certainly closed its offices in Dubai in the aftermath of the sanctions.
But
that's the background. But Chantel Cameron, who's going to be Katie Taylor's opponent, was an MTK signing, and her coach is Jamie Moore.
Yeah,
I mean it's not subtle.
No, it's not subtle. And Jamie Moore was actually asked about Daniel Kinahan this week at a press conference by a reporter from the Irish Daily Star, I believe. And Moore said, when he was asked, he said, "We are not here to talk about that, Daniel Kinahan," he's referring to. "We are here to talk about the fight." But of course, Jamie Moore, only a couple of months ago, we were hearing all about Jamie Moore in the Special Criminal Court where we both sat. Jamie Moore was shot. Jamie Moore has no involvement in crime, but he was a talented boxer who became a coach primarily. He was, at the time, I think it was 2015. He was
14, I think.
14. He was staying in Daniel...
2014.
Yeah. So he was, at the time, staying in Daniel Kinahan's villa in the Costa del Sol. He was returning back to the villa after a night out when a gunman jumped out and shot at him. really dangerously, nearly killing him. And we heard in the Special Criminal Court that was a seminal moment in the Hutch Kinahan feud. The Special Criminal Court was told that the shooter was Patrick Hutch Jr. He's never been convicted, obviously, of any of that, but that was given in evidence. And that as a result of that shooting, Patrick Hutch Jr. received a punishment shooting in response by agreement, in which Daniel Kinahan personally shot Patrick Hutch in the leg. That was all said in the Special Criminal Court as given as evidence.
That was given as evidence by Jonathan Dowdall, who also said that the Hutch family paid €200,000 in compensation for the injuries, for the shooting, basically,
of Jamie Moore. I mean, what the theory that was put forward was that the target of the shooting was Daniel Kinahan, but it was late at night and somebody had been mistaken. So subsequently, Jamie Moore, who's well known from appearing on Sky Sports as well, he continued to be constantly photographed with Daniel on social media, things like that. And if you remember, he was one of the people. Was it Fair Media Campaign? Was that what it was called, or Fair News?
Fair News or something.
Fair News.
Yeah.
So this is in the late part of the last decade.
This was after MGM were supposed to have been sold to Sandra Vaughan, the fake tan tycoon from Scotland, who ran it and moved it out to Dubai.
Yeah.
And she always stated that Daniel Kinahan and Matthew Macklin sold it to her outright. Yeah. And because media kept linking Kinahan as the founder to MTK, the newly branded named company, she decided that they were going to issue a kind of a blackout on any journalism.
A boycott of Irish media, and Jamie Moore, of course, was a part of that. So that's one link to Daniel Kinahan. And then,
do you want to know why Jamie Moore was out in Spain? Did you know this?
No.
Yeah. So he was a boxer, obviously, as was Macklin, and during the course of their careers they apparently had this fight which was legendary. They literally fought it out to the death, and Jamie Moore was injured after it and was in hospital, and Matthew Macklin went to see him, and they really were, I suppose, that's what that sport is. It's a sport, you know what I mean? In the normal world you'd think if somebody mauled you and kicked you and punched you that way that you would be enemies, but they weren't. They were sportsmen, and they became very firm friends after it, actually. And Jamie Moore went out to Spain to sort of fulfill Macklin's dream of a comeback, one final show, one final win, because of course he had moved out to Marbella, was in this very high-tech gymnasium. They were bringing over boxers who never saw the likes of it. It was like a nirvana for them. They were being put up in villas with swimming pools in Spain, and they were able to train full-time, which is a costly business, really. Yeah. In boxing, not everybody is able to fulfill their dreams of becoming a professional.
Yeah, it's hard to make money.
So Moore went out to train Macklin.
Yeah.
And I don't think he ever won that fight that he wanted to, or whatever. He conceded defeat and retirement in the aftermath of it. But that's why he was there. Yeah. And, so a close friendship, a close bond with Macklin, obviously, who was very closely friends and best friends with Daniel Kinahan.
Yeah, he described that. Matthew Macklin described Daniel Kinahan as his best friend. Though that friendship does seem to have not come to an end, certainly publicly.
Well, I think a lot of friendships around Daniel Kinahan have come to an end since the sanctioning, in particular, those who want to keep their jobs and want to be able to travel to and from the US.
But another one of course, a guy that described Daniel as his friend would be Anthony Fitzpatrick, who was also been named in connection with this boxing night. Again, nothing to do with Katie Taylor, but to do with one of the fighters on the undercard called Gary Cully.
And Chantel Cameron. He's been photographed with both of them since the sanctions. And just to point out that neither of those boxers, Chantel Cameron or Gary Cully, or indeed Jamie Moore, as you've already said, have anything to do with organised crime. No. We're just talking about these links that sort of overshadow the sport.
Yeah, and of course they would not necessarily know anything about what what people are up to. But Anthony Fitzpatrick, of course, also was mentioned in court very, very recently. I don't think it was this year, it was last year, to do with a cab case where a mansion was seized off the Jim Mansfield Jr. In Coldwater Lakes in Saggart. The court was told that the beneficial owner of this house was actually Daniel Kinahan, and in the meantime, while that went through the legal system, which takes a good long number of years, as we all know, Anthony Fitzpatrick was living in that house, rent-free, the court was told as well. Anthony Fitzpatrick is, from his own description in the affidavit, a childhood friend of Daniel. He's originally from Tallaght. They seem to have maybe played football together as teenagers. His name first appeared in the Sunday World in 2010 when he was arrested as part of Operation Shovel, when the Spanish police picked up a lot of people suspected of being linked to the Kinahan criminal organised crime group. Ultimately, he never faced any charges and was never brought before a court. However, he became kind of one of the faces of MTK Global, I think it's fair to say.
I mean, when that house was raided, I think for the second time, the first time that house in Coldwater Lakes, number 10, was raided, Matthew Macklin was staying in it.
Yeah.
And the second time it was raided, or searched, shall we say, by the Criminal Assets Bureau, Fitzpatrick was in it. And Fitzpatrick was said at the time to be running the MTK. Was he an accountant? Is he doing the accounts?
No,
he seems to run the thing.
I think
like
he was
a
business manager, I think,
yeah.
or something described as something like that.
Yeah.
Certainly, he doesn't have any criminal convictions of any note.
He was definitely friends. You see, the Kinahan boys with their father lived in Tallaght at one point, which I hadn't realised. It was actually Anthony Fitzpatrick who, when being questioned in relation to this house, gave up that information. I think they obviously, while their father was in and out of prison during their younger years, he must have been out and had a home over in Tallaght himself, and they used to stay with him, or they were living with him full time, and they became very close with him. And others too who followed them out to Spain and followed the father out to Spain were from that time period in his life, which we don't know much about what Christy Kinahan Sr. was doing, but that's how far back they go. But yeah, and he has shown up, basically been photographed with both Cully and Chantel Cameron. Of course, Gary Cully's on the undercard as well, former MTK boxer. There's very little to do being made of it. There seems to me to be a kind of an element, I think, with the sporting media that's all over and done with.
Yeah.
That kind of nastiness that went on, that it was parked when the US sanctions came out against Kinahan, and he was officially, because of course there was so many denials over the years that he had anything to do with boxing, that boxing was in any way compromised by organised crime. And it was like this sort of baying mob had always come out supporting Daniel Kinahan, and of course saying that he had no criminal convictions. Many of the boxers that were signed to that MTK label lined up to support and defend him over the years.
Which they don't continue to do now.
No, they've been silenced somewhat.
Yeah.
And of course, in the aftermath of the sanctions, Tyson Fury couldn't go to the US. His brother,
Tommy Fury
has been refused entry to the US as well.
Yeah.
How long that is going to continue, we don't know. Certainly some big sporting events are still happening out in the United Arab Emirates. My own contacts, for what it's worth, in the criminal underworld, tell me that Daniel Kinahan is still involved in boxing behind the scenes. I'm not surprised, but that nothing has essentially changed or will unless he's picked up.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the sort of the centre of boxing nearly seems to be edging towards the Middle East. A lot of the big fights are going on there. They're moving away from that. Seems to be where the money is available to make them happen. Daniel Kinahan has never willingly moved away from boxing. No. I mean, that is a fact.
Yeah. So he seems intent to just continue, doesn't he? And
he does seem
to continue everything, really.
And of course, you see, he's had the people in the boxing world who obviously some of them certainly didn't believed he was an innocent man who was being picked on. There's others, I believe, like the fact he was a gangster and like being around that whiff of danger. I fully believe that.
But sure, he's almost like a celebrity within that world, Daniel Kinahan. Like, I mean, if you talk to people who were involved in his mob, in his larger mob, or were working around it, they will always say that he didn't speak to the underlings. He would never come out to places where they were. He was like one of those aloof CEOs of a company who might show up briefly at the Christmas party and then disappear away to a kind of a small circle, elite circle around him, who would have been the guys on the top wages. And that's the way he has always operated.
Yeah, and I mean, look, who knows what's happening over in those countries in terms of finances. I mean, the idea that they have to file finances and there's due diligence about what money is going where in an equivalent as they wouldn't in say in Ireland or some other countries, it's just not going on like that. I mean, we don't know and may never know how it's operating over there, but the net is going to continue to close in. I think a big part of it for Daniel Kinahan and maybe his father is they have to give off the impression that it's business as usual. Of course. You know, if they look weak or like they're doomed, then the piranhas will get at them, you know.
But go back to this, because this is going to be a huge night in Dublin in the Three Arena. It's going to be a huge national news story that Katie Taylor is coming home. She's going to be practically welcomed on an open top bus in to fight. It's a fantastic moment for her in her career. Yeah. And, you know, are we the only ones who think it's slightly coloured by what's still there in the background? And that, I suppose, none of those people in boxing have come out ever and condemned. You know, they said before, a lot of them, they didn't know what was going on. They do now, because it's a year since the US Treasury told them exactly what was going on in the Kinahan organisation, that it was a trans-global drug and weapon organisation, that they had been responsible for murders, that they were responsible for shipping cocaine across the globe, you know, and massive money laundering. They know that now a year, and nobody has come out to condemn. Would that help even?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a regulatory problem, is it? Like, I mean, who's regulating them? That's the issue. And, you know, if you want to buy a Premier League club, and I'm far from saying that that's a perfect system, but you have to prove you're a fit and proper person in order to buy one. So there is the boxing doesn't have that, and that's probably what it needs. Personally, I think for Katie Taylor, I don't think for her it'll overshadow it. I think
she's bigger than it.
Yeah, she's bigger than it, and the goodwill that she has built up, it doesn't. You know, nobody wants to sully that. It's just a pity that we're you know, Jamie Moore is doing press conferences and sort of saying as if, how dare you ask me that?
How dare you ask me? Yeah.
And I mean, of course, it has to be asked, and it should be asked.
There's an arrogance to that.
Yeah,
really, there really is an arrogance to that you could take that attitude to it, in particular in this country. Yeah, given what happened in the aftermath of, you know, those incidents happening in Spain, what happened here as regards to the Kinahan Hutch feud, and the strain it put on communities in Dublin, the strain it put on the policing system, and other people who were caught up in it.
And you see, I think last week, some of the figures, I don't have them to the top of my head, but the absolute collapse in gangland shootings, and that due to the fact that the Kinahan organisation has been dismantled. I mean, it's a notable, visible effect that this organisation, which tried to use boxing, its dismantling has made a difference. And so, of course, he should be asked about it.
And it's not as if it's this localised feud. I mean, this is a worldwide, global story that you know, has gone to the level of those sanctions, which doesn't happen very often with organised crime groups. It's never happened before with an Irish organised crime group. I don't think it's happened before with European groups. And obviously we saw and we spoke about in the last couple of weeks, Eden Gassonen from the Balkans has also been added to that and has been described as a business partner of the Kinahans.
Yeah, I mean, it's been reserved for Colombian cartels and Mexican cartels up to this point. But yeah, look,
we're not allowed to ask. We're just to get over it, move on.
Yeah.
There's a fight to organise here.
Yeah.
It's just extraordinary.
Well,
okay. Well, we'll keep an eye, and be interesting to see. I'd love to see what that security bill is and who's picking it up and what the situation is, because McGregor's always floating around a little bit, isn't he? He's always on the outskirts.
I don't know.
Of things.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly made headlines.
What I wanted to say to you was, by the way, because I realised this the other day, with my mastermind, your specialist subject is, but you see that whole story around Stephen Gerrard and hanging out with the Byrnes, and his daughter's gone out with Lee Byrne, I think, is it?
It's Stephen Gerrard's daughter, who's a sort of influencer. He's gone out with Lee Byrne, who's the son of Liam Byrne.
Yes, and we, of course, have seen pictures of Stephen Gerrard with Nathan Biggie Little, who's he
was described as a very junior member of the Byrne organised crime group during a cab case previously.
Exactly. So that's who he is. So he's been driven around by this guy when he's in whatever, and he has been seen photographed and videoed with Liam Byrne himself, who is clearly has criminal convictions and has been named as one of the key members, really, of the Kinahan organisation here in Ireland. He is, I believe, in Dubai himself now. But anyway, what I wanted to say to you was, do you remember in 2016 when Liam Byrne's house in Raleigh Square was raided by the Criminal Assets Bureau, and there was a load of stuff taken out of it, and some of it was eye-wateringly, like, gaudy and whatever else. But one of the things was a pair of signed runners. Yeah, Stephen Gerrard's runners.
Yeah, he's a massive Liverpool fan, Liam Byrne. He's constantly been pictured at their Champions League games, away games,
and
in
clearly
Europe.
bought these at an auction or something, or was he given them? I wondered.
Can't
Did
remember.
they know each other that long?
I don't know. There was there was a signed photo, and of course he did relocate himself up to over there.
Yeah.
To that area in Liverpool. So Stephen Gerrard, I don't know. I don't know.
Anyway, it's up to everyone themselves to whatever company they keep. But
it is, and of course, he's not involved in crime. We have to keep saying that, and that's
we sure do.
To be true with
I
Stephen
should actually
Gerrard.
just record that so as we can just keep, pinging it in every few minutes.
Yeah, but he's not. But
obviously he's not exactly. But we do say that for a reason, because we have to be fair and accurate in all our reporting, be it on audio or in the written word.
Yeah.
So. Okay, we'll come back to the boxing and see if we are alone in our sort of
observations on that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nicola.
Thanks, Niall.